Okay, you're live on YouTube.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. This is Kathy Zender-Wilson, Chair of the Human Relations Board for the City of Battle Creek. This is our monthly meeting, Wednesday, August 17th. And thank you for as we start. This is our first time doing live translation. We're excited to have our partners VOSIS here with us. And so for those who need language translation, I believe it should be obvious to you how you do that. So I'm going to get us started with roll call, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Is that
okay. Good afternoon.
So let's shorten it up.
Miss Spencer.
Shorten it up.
Absent.
And
Miss Wardell.
you know, if we,
Absent.
you're gonna shorten things.
Pastor Hooper.
Yes, Pastor Hooper coming to you from Battle Creek.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Wilson.
Yep, reporting remotely from Battle Creek.
Thank you. Commissioner Herring.
Yeah, that gives them even more space, even though they're not.
Absent.
Correct.
Oh, you're muted, Alicia. Oh, it wasn't you.
It was. I don't know how that happened. Thank you. Mr. Lucier.
Reporting from Battle Creek.
Thank you. Miss Austin.
Present, reporting from Battle Creek.
Thank you. Mr. Cotton.
Take this off.
I know I saw him.
Present, reporting from Battle Creek.
Oh, there he is. Thank you. Jennifer Greger.
I can function with just this.
Absent.
And I don't know the
Derek Freeman.
10 feet out this way. Right. So
Absent.
we just need to have
Miss
a second
Ackley?
here. If one of them can come back. 'Cause Keys, you know.
Yes, Kiona Ackley reporting from Battle Creek.
Thank you.
So
Miss Kipp.
let's have them come back. And say, here's
President reporting for Battle Creek.
Thank you. Miss Lastly.
Small it up. Small it up.
Absent.
Small it up.
Mr. Woodward.
We can put cabinets over.
Reporting from Battle Creek.
Thank you so much.
Or whatever.
All right, Alicia, do we have quorum?
We do not. We need one more to get here and then we will.
Okay, we'll hold off on our minutes from last month then. So thank you for that. And thank you all for being here. Do we have any communications or committee reports?
There were none.
Thank you. So again, I want to thank VOSIS for their partnership here with us. We are piloting live translation on behalf of the city through the Human Relations Board. Our goal is to learn what we can about making our engagement more accessible to our community. And so I just want to give a moment and some space, if it's possible, to have somebody from VOSIS share with us anything you'd like us to know about these services or anything you want to share with the board. And I'm not sure that's possible because I think they might be in a separate room. So we will let them stay in that space. And my goal and hope is that we can see if this expands our reach and allows our non-English speaking folks to be with us and to really further our goal as a board as making having more constructive communication between the city and its residents. And so again, great appreciation for the work that they're doing and for the translation efforts. So I'm going to move on now to our community survey for the Citizens Review Board. And I want to give a special thanks to the small work group that met, and that included Pao Shan, Pastor Hooper, and Kiona Ackley, and myself. We were able to, through a huge effort by Pao Shan, for somebody who's just started this, he really kind of went over and above with his homework assignment and drafted a survey for us to respond to. And I think it allowed us to really create a survey that I think is going to work for us. And I want to open it up for discussion. But Alicia, Dina has just arrived. So if you want to take her, then we can go back to minutes real quick.
Sure, Miss Spencer.
Yep, joining remotely from Battle Creek.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. All right, so I'm going to bring it back up to minutes really quick because the bulk of our meeting is going to be about that survey. So let's get that out of the way. It's for anybody who's had a chance to review the minutes. Can I get a motion or any comments or feedback?
I motion to support the meeting minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve minutes. And any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
I think they were too stuck on.
Excuse me, Kathy.
Yes,
Could we please get another second? I don't think you've discussed with Pastor Hooper his attendance, the form we need from him. So if I could get someone else to second those minutes just this time.
yep, thank you. So formality, Pastor Hooper, your I believe in July is when your term ended, so we'll need somebody else to second. We still want you here as long as you want to be here, but we don't have that application, so it hasn't gone through the commission process.
Chris Lucio, second.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, all in favor again, say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think we're good there. Minutes have been approved. All right, now back to the community survey. You should have received an email earlier today from city staff with the draft survey. I just want to open it up for discussion and get your thoughts. I also welcome our subcommittee members, but let's make this as informal as possible. You can just unmute yourself and talk. We did have this, the original draft included a question that was rather large about who should be participating in the board itself. It was suggested that that should be more of an internal discussion with the group and not just left to community input, because this survey got a little unyieldy also. And we're not sure that people would have enough information to be able to answer that question. So that was one that was removed that I think was really good recommendation from city staff. And you will see a highlighted section where we were hoping to have some input from the city, specifically from Chief, around different ways that the police department might show up in the community. We felt limited on what we could put there as options. And so we were hoping that they could incorporate some. We're still waiting on that. And then Chris, thank you for sending along those demographic details from how you've used them in the survey in the past, so we can incorporate those. And Jessica has also offered to do that for us before it gets finalized. All right, so content. Who's had a chance to review, and is there any feedback?
I thought it looked really good. I was really impressed. Thanks to the subcommittee for putting it together. I had a couple of small things I thought. On question number 7, the Citizen Review Board has many goals. Which do you think are the most important? Check all that apply. And there's a nice list there, but it did seem like it is one of those prioritizing questions. So it seemed to me like asking people to sort of prioritize like up to 3 responses or something might make sense, as that might avoid the situation where someone might just say, well, all of these rules, which wouldn't necessarily be as helpful as getting folks to prioritize. It seemed like, given the conversation we had last week.
Yeah.
One thought, and then another had to do with demographics, and I realized folks were just sort of filling things in. The around sexual orientation and gender identity, we've struggled with this before and tried to look up best practices. And I did find a really good article in the past that sort of talked through the issues with what kinds of options to present to those questions. And it really comes down to, well, what's the purpose? Why are you including it on your survey? It sort of addresses a number of those concerns. We had a similar concern as to what I think we might have here, and that is that we wanted to disaggregate the data we were collecting. And because of that, you want to make sure that any of the responses that people have are going to be something that when you disaggregate the data, you're going to be left with something meaningful to be able to analyze, or meaningful, like if you do crosstabs of the data, you're going to have enough there. And so our challenge in previous surveys is in responses to sexual orientation or gender identity, the first time around we had gotten too granular, and then having so making sort of broader classification groups led to having data that we could analyze. I don't know that we necessarily got it right. We did go with what was the particularly around gender identity. The question in the survey I gave, it seemed a little, the terms that were used there seemed a little weird. They did follow what was suggested as national best practice, but So I don't know if it's necessarily the perfect way. What I will tell you is it gave us data that was grouped together enough that we could actually analyze it and be able to use it or make use of it. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Chris.
Kathy, I do want to bring something under sexual orientation. Trans is not a sexual orientation. It is an identity, not an orientation.
Thank you. Okay, and so for the purposes of today's discussion, this is all really helpful, and know that other people are going to look at that. These were just placeholders.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I really appreciate that, though. I
It
think,
just needs to be moved to the other category. I mean, it should be on there for sure. Just in the
All right.
other category is all.
perfect. And to Chris's point, I think that, when we get this data back, so disaggregating the data will allow us to know, are there differences of opinions and experiences across the different demographic communities that we have in Battle Creek? I think it'll be illuminating for many reasons, not just for the Citizens Review Board, but it will also allow the police to have more information about maybe how they are received or experienced in the community. And so I don't want to get so granular that people will be a little resistant to answer the questions for fear of being identifiable, but also that it gives us enough information to make really informed decisions. Jeff.
Yeah, I was, excuse me. I was kind of speaking to the same point that Deanna was speaking to, that sexual orientation part, like whether or not an individual agrees with policing practices or different engagements with the community. I don't know whether or not collecting data on an individual sexual orientation makes the most difference. If we are just individual, we citizens of Battle Creek. So it almost seems like it's opening a door for more discrimination to say, oh, well, those statistics we can't qualify those because a certain percentage of them were this or a certain percentage of them were that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I believe a more blanket question, a more blanket questionnaire that doesn't necessarily attempt to pinpoint and identify specific things of the individual as opposed to specific things that the individual citizen is complaining about would be more effective. I don't understand these attempts to isolate the people's complaints. I don't understand that.
I'd like to speak to maybe one point on that is, so I do think it's important, and one of the reasons, there's lots of different reasons, but a key reason is I think of a domestic violence situation. So when we typically think of domestic violence, we think of a hierarchy. So one person being more powerful than another, and typical a male-female role. In our community, many times if it's male on male violence or female on female violence and the police are called, it is not taken seriously because they many times will view us as equal players in that situation. And so it's dismissed, it's not taken seriously, reports aren't taken, people aren't arrested if that is warranted. And it's just like, suck it up, make pals, blah, blah, blah. So that's like one situation where I think that can be important. If we're not getting those services because we're just kind of, a couple of girls having a tiff or whatever it might be. I get what you're saying. I feel like it puts us all in our own little boxes and there's 20 different.
I get it. I get what you're saying. I get it.
Yeah.
I get
So,
it.
but anyway, I just wanted to give you an example.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dina. And I think,
And thanks for that too, Jeff.
yeah, I actually really appreciate this group's ability to help us all grow and expand our thinking and our perspective on this. So you guys just really demonstrated what that looks like. So thank you for that. Kiona.
Thank you for that, Dina. I appreciate it. In addition to that, I was just wanting to add a little more context for Jeff. I believe that it would be helpful when it comes to disaggregating the data as well. And so, because I questioned that also, Jeff, during our subcommittee conversation, and then just hearing some of the feedback and taking it through another lens, it was just the segregation portion as well.
Thank you. And Jeff, did you raise your hand again, or is it just still up? Okay, good. All right. Thank you. You know, as a practice, I'd like to really get my arms around the idea of targeted universalism, and you can't really think about where there are problems unless you really get that detailed around who it is you're surveying. And so I do think it'll be very instructive. And so I'm going to lean on Chris as well as Jessica and our city staff to really get the best practice down when it comes to those identities. So yes, Jeff.
And excuse me. The main reason why I made that comment was because I know that my demographic, right, the individuals that exist on the other side of those barriers that everybody trying to penetrate, we don't really subscribe to these polls. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't really subscribe to these questionnaires. We don't log on to these meetings. My kind of people, the dudes from the streets that's on the other side of those barriers. So, and my concern is, if these numbers are accumulated, if these complaints are accumulated and the adjustments are made, then I would rather those adjustments be made blanketly. I would rather those adjustments be made to the system rather than just those who are responding to these polls. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Chris.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's exactly why you want to disaggregate data, Jeff, is because, you know, these our polls are not going to be distributed scientifically. We can't expect that we're going to get a truly random sample. And so we know that they're going to skew certain ways in terms of who responds. It'll depend on how we collect the data or who's likely to respond to surveys in general or the mediums, you know, that we use. But if you disaggregate the data, then we can double check and say, well, we know that this population was way underrepresented in our survey, but we can pull that out and go, okay, we know we didn't capture a lot of it, but if we just pull out their data, how did they feel about it? And that allows us to tease out things that are viewpoints that are important and are reflective of our community, but we're underrepresented in our survey, and ensure that we don't miss them. So, and I think, like, with the items that we have here, this is asking fewer demographic questions than like the survey I shared with the group. But it may be that these are the appropriate questions to ask. Because I do think it's a fair question to say, does it make sense for us we don't want to fatigue folks that are answering questions. So you don't want to ask a whole bunch of information about who they are unless it's relevant to what you're trying to know and understand. These seem like useful things, like, you know, the sexual orientation piece and the gender identity. You know, thank you for sharing that, Deanna, because those seem like they're meaningful to me. And by geography, that seems meaningful to me. Race and age seems meaningful. There's other things on our survey that may not be helpful, you know, things around income, stuff like that may just like discourage people from filling out the survey or fatigue people, and they're not really helpful in helping us understand, you know, stuff. So.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris. And I think that, you know, as we get this data in, our goal here is that we release this for 30 days and really reflect on what it is we're learning. And I think from an outreach perspective, if there are gaps in our knowledge based on this with a given demographic, then we decide on a plan for how we're going to gather that information so that our decisions aren't absent their voice, but that this will at least give us a sense of, hey, we didn't get a single person from 49037 to respond to this. We need a targeted outreach approach to actually get some information there. And then it's who do we partner with to actually make that happen?
I feel like it kind of responds to like one of the main questions we had when Kerry originally first did his presentation was, at least for me anyway, it didn't seem like, it seemed clear from the discussion we were having that maybe not enough people in our community had sort of weighed in, and maybe this will help us. Even if we can't say whether or not enough people have weighed in, we can at least say, did a representative group of people in our community weigh in? I don't know. So
yeah. So the city has agreed to publish or not publish, to bring awareness to the survey through the water bills in September. But the survey itself is too long to include in the water bill. And so what we would do is include instructions on how to get to it. So it'd either be a QR code, a website. We would figure out the logistical details with them. But then we'd also be asking some of our community partners to be distributing it as, when and where they think it's possible. In an ideal world, we'd have, if this were more of a scientific approach to this, we would be simultaneously doing some interviews so that we could gather some information from people that might not be open to doing a survey like this online. But for the purposes of us just being able to take this to the next step about feeling like we have valid enough information to bring a proposal to the commission, because ultimately that's what we'd want to do. This will be helpful for us. Yes, Jeff.
I think we can do that, what you just said and breathed over. I think we can, like, take the camera. Don't blink. I was about to say, Emira, don't turn your camera off right now, right? Like, I'm in here. I do video work all the time, interview work all the time. We all know who Emira is, right? We don't even got to throw that out there. Like, I believe amongst this group, it is. I think we can spend some time and I think it would be kind of fun, right? Like, maybe target some spaces or some locations, right? Maybe even if it's just downtown, right? Maybe the Columbia, the business district, where we spend time walking from store to store and just asking 2 or 3 random questions to everybody. I think we can do that. I'm willing to do it for free.
So I think we've got a volunteer.
Yeah.
Get out there and do some surveying that is, more, at the street level. And I don't want to stop you from doing that, Jeff. I don't want to, what we could do is potentially ask by email anybody who's interested, so that we're not asking anybody on the spot of what they could do, but see what they might contribute to that, so that we feel like we have some more of that qualitative data to go along with this as well. And so,
But I'm sorry, but
no, go ahead, Jeff.
I would need, if it's possible, if it's a way that we could condense these interests, these questions, right, which I would call interests. If it's a way that we condense these interests into 2 or 3 basic, simple questions that we could just walk around asking people, I would have fun doing that. If we could, break them down and condense them into 2 or 3, maybe 3 questions that I could just ask everybody the same 3 questions. We could do that. I could spend time going neighborhood to neighborhood, different areas.
Jeff,
Yeah.
why don't you and I get together outside of this meeting and talk about what that might look like? Because I think
Okay.
it'll take a little bit of lifting to think about like categories for these questions, and how do you do that? And then how would you gather the data in a way that would allow you to bring it back to this group so that we can.
We're gonna have it on video. We already know the process is gathering. It's gonna be on video. The response is gonna be on video. It's gonna be a video. It's gonna be a video that we can watch first and respond to. I mean, if we just talking about walking up to regular people and asking them what do they think about these things that are on this questionnaire, it's a lot of questions, but some of these questions fall up under the same blanket, right? If we could break these questions and put them all up under 2 or 3 different blankets, whether it be policing in the community and their experience with the police in Battle Creek, or resources in the city and their experience with accessing resources in the city, or their experience with the education. We can make an umbrella of 2 or 3 questions and go around asking regular people these questions at liquor stores, gas stations, grocery stores, everywhere in Battle Creek. I mean, this is very possible. This is an easy do. It's an easy video to make. That'll be a little 5-10 minute video that we could all sit down and watch, and we can observe the answers of the people. We can definitely do that. I'm willing to do that by myself.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Taushan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just thought it would be a useful resource to create a PDF letter-sized poster file with the QR code. Just something really simple that I know I've got a number of places I could just put one up, but it's just really easy for people to scan a QR code as they're like going to Horrocks or something like that. So we could, easily reach a lot of people that way. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So I think next steps is working with the city team to figure out from a communications perspective, what pieces do we need to create and what are the resources we have available to make that happen. Our recommendation from the small group was that we're ready to launch the day after Labor Day. So that gave us, the first week of September, going through that first week of October, and that when we come back to our October meeting, we would have then enough data to be able to look at and say, do we feel confident that what we're hearing is consistent support for or resistance against the development of a citizens review board? And then, just from the perspective of each of these questions, what the responses would be. And then that hopefully we would be in a position to figure out how does that translate to what we do with the current proposal that was on the table from Kerry and his group. And what else have we learned that needs to be combined? We actually had talked as a small group about the need to just maybe start over with a proposal that incorporates both. So it's not just trying to update the one that is on the table, but that it's an incorporation of the two. Chris.
I was just, so how is the data being analyzed on the back end? And so so it's an online survey? And the
Yes.
data is being collected via
So it will be SurveyMonkey, I believe, is what was
Okay.
recommended. And so it will populate reports for us. I think
Well-
the theme of it and the analysis of it is going to be something that, I'll meet with Kiona to talk about how she and I as chair and co-chair want to either see if there's support at the city for analyzing that, if that's something we can get a small group from here to do.
So like reviewing the I mean, like I can cross tab the data or do that kind of stuff. So prep it so that it's at least cross tabbed and disaggregated. And then once you have that, then it becomes interesting. I mean, it's very, very easy to sort of like figure out what are the insights to be drawn from it, and then that's why I
Okay.
said, so if I think Jessica could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that SurveyMonkey will give you data in a Excel spreadsheet format, right? So
I believe it.
I think that's the case. So
I believe
that
it
would be
does.
the key if we wanted to like cross tab the data or something. So.
All right, thank you. So it sounds like we've got the capacity on this board to actually do what we need to do to take this, make the data actionable for us. All right, any other thoughts or reflections on any of the questions? Anything that you felt was missing?
Yeah, just suggestion of the nice thing about doing the video, if you have video of asking the questions, is if we decide to do any kind of presentation of the data, the video might be a nice piece to sort of add to it, because it sort of puts, it gives you some flavor of people actually answering the questions. It's a way to introduce people to the survey, the questions we asked, that kind of thing. So it could be kind of neat.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And let me add, it would help if I had maybe a card or a QR code, right? We could turn the QR code, we could print the QR code out on a bunch of little pieces of paper or have it available, and they will be able to scan that QR code and actually answer the entire survey. Have the 2 or 3 blanket small, basic questions that I could ask in person, but also let them scan the QR code with their phone and answer all of the questions in detail.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think that'd be ideal.
I like
But
it too, and it also gives people the anonymity if they're not feeling safe answering this on a camera.
Yeah, sure.
If they've had an interaction.
Yeah, and I always
Yeah.
ask, I always ask them, and it's only 3 different responses. Either yes, I'm cool, go ahead and record me, or no, you could point it at the sky or a building and they can hear my voice, or go on, no, I don't want nothing to do with this. You know what I mean? It's one of the 3. some people are cool with just their voices being heard. Some people are cool with their voice and faces being heard, and some people don't want nothing to do with it. But collecting the data, most people, they don't mind. They don't mind it. Most people, they don't mind it.
Yeah.
So I do have one question. Amira, I'm curious if the group that created that initial proposal, have they reconvened at all? Have you heard anything from that group?
I have not heard anything from them, Kathy. I'd be happy to check on that to see where they are.
Thank you. What I want to make sure we're doing is that we're working collaboratively with that group, and this doesn't feel like some sort of usurping of what they started. This is meant to be a complement to that, and so I want to, I hope that it's seen that way.
I don't have a problem with usurping. I'm just joking.
All right. So I think we've got our marching orders with this survey. Thank you all for today's conversation, as well as to the work group who really kind of did the heavy lift of putting this together. And we've got a couple weeks until we hope it launches. So I will work with city staff, and then Jeff, I'll get back with you about what support I can provide, or anyone else who wants to volunteer to on the interviews to do that. I think Chris made a really good point that the more multidimensional our materials are, I think the greater impact it will have on those who need to be the audience. All right, now, as far as community points of interest, I'm curious if there's anything going on in the community that people have heard about that they would like to bring to the attention of the city. I mean, again, our ultimate goal with this board is to create the communication lines between the city and its residents, and the residents and the city. And so you are our eyes and ears out in the community, and I'm curious if there's anything that we need to be kind of mindful of and want to discuss.
The only thing I can think of that, and I can't think of a specific example right this second, but I just hear it in general, kind of in general conversation a lot, and I kind of always have as long as I've lived in the city, is our permitting process for any kind of improvements, any kind of, what do I want to say? Gosh, I'm blanking on the word.
Events, but you're talking about like for the physical infrastructure, that kind of
Yes.
permitting?
Yes,
Okay.
it's the red tape and the lack of timeliness, and almost that the city ties your hands, or it's so expensive that it's almost impossible to do. And it just, the blight in the area, one house has some peeling paint and they get a blight citation, and the next house has a yard full of garbage and they get nothing, and like that sort of thing. I hear a lot of that talk, a lot. I
So
mean,
what
I
people
can
like-
tell you, one of my favorite neighbors, their yard looks like a train wreck. They never get a ticket. I know other people that have had, a car sitting in their driveway up on jacks, and then they've got a ticket, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. And so I hear a lot of that just chatter, and I've always heard that. So
Thank you,
that's
Deanna.
all I've got. Yep, you're welcome.
I would like to second that feedback too. Thank you for lifting that.
Thanks, Kiana. Jeff?
Yeah, I actually, what Deanna said, I got a beef going on with the garbage man myself. Like, I don't know what's going on, but they won't pick me and my neighbor's garbage up sometimes. They just leave it in the front yard. And I'm also wondering, I have a question as far as who maintains the city sidewalks? Does the homeowner maintain the city sidewalk, or does the city maintain the city sidewalks, right? I live right here on West Michigan next to King Museum. When I take a walk up to the store that's right by my house, the sidewalks, not even just in front of my house, but the grass and the weeds from the sidewalk have grown over like maybe about at least 1/3 or two or half of the sidewalks. Like there's just narrow walkways all up and down my whole street. So I'm wondering who maintains those sidewalks. My third issue is more of a personal issue, but I've been attempting to get some type of city support, community support. It ain't been that easy, but we got a little street war going on with teenagers from Battle Creek and Kalamazoo. It's been 2 or 3 murders involved in this street war going on. These are teenagers jumping on the highway from Battle Creek and Kalamazoo, shooting each other. And I'm absolutely shocked that everybody seemed like they just waiting to see who get murdered on the news. Like nobody's jumping in the middle of it. And I've received more feedback and involvement and planning acceptance from Kalamazoo organizations than I have from Battle Creek. Right, like these are Battle Creek Central and mostly Kalamazoo Central high school students engaging in a war with each other right now, and everybody act like they just waiting to see what happened on the news. This is a serious issue to me, a very serious issue when we have teenagers that's willing to get on the highway and do something violent towards each other. And I don't want to wait till one of them die, or I don't want to wait till a court date where we got to prosecute one of these teenagers. I would prefer that we put some type of energy behind stopping it and figuring out why it's happening. So I wanted to put that on.
Thanks, Jeff. Is there a role specifically that you see the city playing in that? And what does that look like? I think the more
Definitely.
specific play.
The city of Battle Creek and the city of Kalamazoo, we so close to each other. There's no way that we shouldn't be having a big meeting that everybody's invited to with all the power brokers, what I call power brokers, some people who can influence the things that happen in different neighborhoods that we all encompass, right? There's no way the power brokers are not supposed to be sitting down at a table trying to figure out what we could do about this before the end of the summer and before this next school year starts. So this next season of Battle Creek Central kids and Lakeview kids and Kalamazoo Central kids and Lloyd North kids are not involved in whatever this nonsense is that's going on between this couple groups of young brothers. And I don't want it to be police driven. I don't want to lock nobody up or anything like that. Although I know it's a lot of families that's been involved that are going to feel that way. We can hear their voices, but it's been some young men who's lost their lives over the last couple summers with this war. It's a war right now. See, we don't like to identify little small wars that's happening in our community. Everybody don't deal with wars. This war don't leak out to the neighborhood and Lakeview or out there by the mall. But this war is happening in my community. It matters to me. These are young brothers and sisters that matter, to me. And I'm sure they matter to the young. It's funny because I know the ones in the neighborhoods in Kalamazoo. I know they big brothers and they big homies. And so it matters. I know it matters to them, but there's no resources that could stop it. We can't stop it. We talking to them, we trying, but if we can't offer them a job or a way to complete all their credits in high school so they can graduate, if we can't offer them things, which is assistance from the city and the systems, right? If we can't offer them things, if those energies are not present, we just saying the same thing everybody else said. Y'all should stop this, man. Y'all should care. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Well, Jeff, thank you for that. And thank you for bringing it to our attention. So what I can do then is bring that to Rebecca when I debrief with her from this meeting and just get her thoughts and reflections about what's possible from her perspective. Maybe she can take the initiative to reach out to the city manager in Kalamazoo, but thank you very much for bringing that to the attention. I do want to give Chris a second to at least respond if he wants to the idea of permits and code and whether or not there's anything that this group can do to help people understand better what the process is, because clearly, and I've heard it myself, it feels like there's inconsistent treatment across the community. And so that might be true or it might not be, but the impact is that that's how it feels in the community. So there needs to be something that gets addressed. So Chris, I'll give you a second, and then Keon, I see your hand, so I'll have you go right after Chris.
Well, I mean, I think it's always, if people are having concerns around that, it's always worth a conversation, and maybe it's worth us sort of looking into it if we feel in particular that, there's certain groups that are being affected or something like that, and it's a human relations board issue. I would say that we, have 13,000 interactions a year We run a 4 or 5 person call center around code compliance, permitting, and inspections. That is just all day long, every business day of the year, answering questions for folks. We probably have one of the most thorough rental inspection programs in the state of Michigan. We're one of the few communities in the entire state of Michigan that proactively does goes to every single property at least once every 3 years. We inspect over 94% of our rentals. Most communities can't even tell you how many they inspect, let alone inspect that high of a number. And that's dramatically different than the way it was before 2007, when we implemented a lot of the ordinances that we currently have around rental inspections and vacant building monitoring.
Right now in this moment.
Kiona, can you mute, please?
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
So-
Thank you.
So I just bring that up because we used to register, like 30% of our rentals had been registered ever in our history since the 80s up until 2007. So I would say a lot of it's dramatically improved. And the other piece of it is that, like with the rental piece, we inspect 94% of our rentals, which is an incredibly high percentage, but we have 8,500 rental units. So that 5, 6, or 7% that aren't registered, that's 500 properties. And so that's enough units. If they're especially problematic, they're flying under the radar, to generate lots and lots of concern. So like when I present in front of the city commission, I often say, city commissioners, that doesn't mean you're not going to hear about problematic rental units all the time. Even if we're doing a good job, you're still going to hear a lot about concerns in the neighborhood. So so I mean, that's the thing is, there are a lot of like really problematic cases. So you can have somebody who's really good at circumventing the tools that we have to sort of have to create compliance. And they can get wrapped up in the court system and be in, dragging those things out for years. If you've got a particular case, talking to us, if you haven't already, have a conversation with us or the staff downtown to be able to work through them, is a good first step. That said, neighborhood planning councils, where a lot of these concerns in neighborhoods get vetted, are starting up again in September. A code compliance officer attends, or a city representative attend each of those meetings along with a police officer. And I'll just tell you, that does serve as a place to lift up issues and have some of them get resolved. But I've been going to those meetings for almost 20 years now, and sometimes these problematic cases can be extreme. We can only enforce the laws that we have or use the tools that we have to create compliance. And some cases can just can be really, really problematic. So we've had situations where you're ended up monitoring a case month after month for years. We've had that happen, and there's just a lot to do around it. So I don't know. I don't know what you want me to say about that. I'm not code compliance and inspections, but I analyze a lot of their data. We do track a lot of that data to see, how we're reaching compliance, where we're doing inspections, that kind of thing. So
That was going to be my follow-up question is, given the conversation we just had about the importance of demographics and disaggregated data, does that same apply when code compliance is doing its work? I think
so there's nothing about that process that's going to collect information, demographic information from folks. Basically what you're working off of is geographies. And then, when we do code compliance, we're implementing a set of code compliance strategies trying to impact on the overall neighborhood health of a neighborhood. We use 8 different indicators of neighborhood health, and then we collect a whole lot of other data about neighborhood health. And we do analyze that data every year. And we don't just do code compliance in neighborhoods, we also try to target our other housing resources into those same areas to have a positive effect. And we measure that and report on that every single year. We're working on that, one of those reports right now. We do make those reports available for public comment. We post them on our website. They're available to this day.
And I think that might be another good way for us to be thinking about how we get this board engaged in like the review of that report. Could they come to a commission meeting hear your presentations.
Well, they
or
can
work
always come to a commission meeting. They can always comment on the reports, and sometimes some years those are more interesting than others. If people have a particular issue, like around code compliance or inspections, that may make it particularly useful or interesting to participate in that. So,
Right. Thank you, Chris. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I knew you'd have some ability to at least respond at some level for the city. Thank you. And then Kiona and then Jeff.
So I thought of another question, but this isn't the question I originally had, and I'm gonna give Jeff the opportunity because he may have something to add or a response to Chris. But what came to mind while Chris was talking, do the board feel that it would serve beneficial to invite a code-compliant staff member in to answer some of the questions we're being asked or we're hearing out in the community? Because a handful comes to mind for me. One as simple as one of my neighbors recently received a code compliance letter stating the chipping of her window paint. Yet we'll go across town and Ian just happens to be in less like more just a different type of neighborhoods. And sorry, I'm trying to keep my little ones quiet as well as I'm multitasking. Okay. And we'll notice a difference, and I just want to know pretty much what Jeff was asking, so to speak. Is there a rhyme or reason on how maybe one geographical area receives monitoring and notifications and fines and fees compared to the other? Like, are they held, even though we're all within the city of Battle Creek, is different folks held at different standards based on the neighborhood, the income in the area, whatever the case may be? So that's, I think that would serve a purpose. But then I'll go back to Jeff, and if you don't mind circling back to me on the other topic as well, I would greatly appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. Jeff.
No, y'all can answer her right now. I'll ask my question after y'all respond to.
Okay, and then we've got to get to public comment here in a minute. Kiona, so you've made a recommendation. Chris, did you have something to say to Kiona?
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, we do look at a lot of those things. I would say that would actually be so responding to like just general concerns about code compliance, like if it's like customer service or if it's something like that, that seems less of a human relations board issue to me. But looking at are there differences in treatment? Like, I think that totally makes sense as a human relations board issue, and that would be interesting to do. And we do that, but it would be great to like, and honestly, I do a lot of that for code compliance because those are community development issues that we concern ourselves with. So we look into that or try to collect data to try and determine that. But that would be an interesting piece, and I would be happy to work with code compliance and inspections to see what we can't do in terms of what kind of data do we have, and is there a way to analyze that, to look at that. And some of it will be explanation, because you can look at the south side of town and say, well, there's a lot less peeling paint tickets. Okay, well, that makes sense. Probably about 200 or 300% more housing is sided, right? Has vinyl siding on it than your older houses with wood siding that's painted are mostly concentrated around downtown. So so we have to try to think about how do we deal with some of those things. Some of it might be a little education piece, but inside of there, I think there are some great questions to ask, and there'll be questions I bet this group would have that we don't know the answers to, and getting to the bottom of them could be very enlightening. One was about sidewalks. In fact, I've tried real hard to try and get some kind of sidewalk audit, working with Neighborhood Planning Council 2, which is over in the Washington Heights neighborhood. This was going back 2016. And I think if we did a thorough audit of all sidewalks, I think we would be, sidewalks in that neighborhood were in particularly rough shape for a number of reasons, but particularly rough shape, and like trying to get to Dudley Elementary School from various parts of the neighborhood is not easy. Some of it has to do with the private sector and private owners not taking care of properties, but some of it's not. And so it would be so, and that's an example of, if you did a real audit there, my guess is that you would find it may not be intentional. They may have like a practice that's neutral in terms of how it's applied, but it may result in consequences for some folks that are not, that aren't equitable at all. So.
And I don't want to, I don't like to just jump in. Chris, it's so important. It may not be to most people, but as a 17-year-old young Black man, the first time I ever got arrested was in Atlanta, Georgia. Not the first time I ever got arrested. The first time I got arrested as an adult, because the first time I got arrested was when I was 11 years old. But the first time I got arrested as an adult, when I first turned 17, was in Atlanta, Georgia, and there weren't any sidewalks. The grass had overgrown all of the sidewalks. So we used to walk on the edge of the street. And that was an encounter I had with the police department down there, that we didn't walk. It's a lot of areas in this neighborhood, Washington Heights specifically, I can only speak for my own, where people don't walk on the sidewalks because the sidewalks are horrible. There's trash on the sidewalks. There's grass that has broken up the concrete. It's old glass, and it's all people just in a certain area, they'll venture off into the street, walk on the street for a minute, and then get back onto the sidewalks, right? So that's a real issue, bro. Like, that's really, the sidewalks in the city is a real issue. The only reason why I raised it is because I walked to the store earlier today and I seen that most of the sidewalks on my street were overgrown by grass and weeds. And I just realized recently with my own property that it only takes a little bit of effort to remove those from on top of that concrete, and you're gonna see the concrete again. But the issue that I wanted to raise when I raised my hand was mold and lead is the issue that I wanted to raise, right? Like a lot of these old homes, mine being one of them. My mom passed away from cancer in 2017. Cancer is not something that really runs in my family regularly. But at the same time that my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, I got 3 neighbors within less than a quarter of a mile of me. My next door neighbor at the time, which now that house has been abandoned, and like 3 houses up the street at the same time, his wife was also diagnosed with cancer. So what kind of study could we do? Like, is it a way that we could find out that there's neighborhoods or sections of this city that have been more exposed to maybe some toxins or anything that could cause cancer, bro? Like I've been getting text messages since we've been on this call where the public has been talking about. I've received text messages talking about ask if they inspect for mold. So many people affected by black mold say the city doesn't check that or listen to complaints against mold or black mold. Specifically Carl Terrace, which is, I forgot the name of it now, but that's the apartment complex over there on the south side, right across Dickman. The arbors, private landlords, and things of that nature, right? It's probably a lot of dwellings in the city of Battle Creek where we have our people living that have not properly been checked for mold or lead, right? So one, my question is it a process that we could start or join that would try to check these areas for mold or lead? And two, what would be the city's response? Like personally, if personally, because my mom passed away of cancer 5 years ago, if the city comes and checks my home, and I swear, bro, I should tell my mom, I have sinuses and allergies, and I should say something in the air, but I sneeze a lot over here where I live at now. I still live here right now. So now every day I spend wondering, every time I sneeze, I wonder if it's mold in the air. I wonder if the walls have lead toxins in them, because this is an old home with predominantly wooden floors. Is there any way we can address that issue, bro? Any way?
So this feels like there's a need for a lot more conversation about what the role is of community health, the role the city plays. I know that there is a lead task force that's tasked with trying to mitigate exposure to lead, especially for children, and that there have been resources made available. Chris's team sits deeply in that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kathy, but let me add that I do have a child on the way that's due to be born in February. So it's worrying me even more, all that much more. Like I want to move out my house. I want to move. I want to move out my house because I'm worried about it. I'm worried
Jeff,
if this
Jeff, I'll
house
call
helped
you.
kill my
I'll call
mom.
you after this and we can address your particular concern right away.
Bless
But
that.
in
Bless
the
that.
long term, as far as it concerns this board, I mean, my division actually does a lot, touches on a lot of that work. My division at the city is community development, it's housing. We are bringing in $2.5 million a year to do lead abatement work in the community, and we're in the middle of that. We're doing a ton of it in your neighborhood. So be happy to talk. And we could cover some of these topics, and this is something that the group wants to cover. We'd be happy to help facilitate that. So.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like, I know that group has long struggled. I used to sit on the lead task force, and the meetings that we would have, folks would be like, we don't know, not everybody will let us in. Even if we have to wait till we're learning from a pediatrician whether or not somebody's been exposed because they'll have high lead levels. So there is a desire to try and get out there and be more preventative around this. But I think it requires community support. So this has been a really good conversation to really start thinking about, how do we do more of that? Does this board have a role in trying to create more of those learning experiences so that we can connect the people that are historically excluded from those tables and from those conversations to be a part of the solutions? Because the resources are there, not necessarily to cover it all, but clearly there is a misalignment. And so being able to address that, I do feel falls on the shoulders of this board to a degree. So thank you for bringing it up, everyone. All right, Kiona, did you have another question?
Mine's brief. I was just going to ask if you can lift not only the matter that Jeff raised about the war between Kalamazoo and Battle Creek. I do apologize, everyone. Can you not only lift that to Rebecca, but also to Chief Blocker? I would appreciate it. Just seeing how are they meeting with the chief in Kalamazoo? What's going on there to try to get a hold of that?
All right, will do. Thank you. All right, well, I am going to move us now to public comment because we are almost at 5 o'clock right now. Do we have any callers or anybody in the meeting right now?
I'm not seeing any callers for public comment.
All right, thank you, Chad.
Yep.
Any board comments, anything that people are, if you don't get to say it now, you're gonna lose it.
I'm surprised we didn't have any conversation today about the DEI officer in the meeting that happened earlier this month. I know a number of folks were there to listen to the candidates, but
yeah, thank you. And
curious
for
to know
those
how
of you
that
who are
goes.
willing to stick around, on Monday night, there was a convening where we got to hear from both of the DEI finalists and then it was last Thursday night, and then submit our feedback on Monday. They were two really powerful candidates, very different in their style and their experiences. And I don't think that we as a city would be poorly served by either. I don't know where it's going to land, but I do think that this is a really important next step to really solidify the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. And so I hope that it isn't my hope, it's my intent that we as a board are an extension of that position, and that they were both females identified, that they see us as support for that work. I think that the task they have in front of them, based on the equity audit and everything else that's going on, is more than a one-person job. So the team that they create is going to be critically important. I don't know, because Rebecca has been out, where things stand in the decision making on that. If we get any updates, I'll be sure to send something by email to the board, though, unless somebody on here knows something that I don't. Okay. Chris, you were there. Anything that you want to add to that?
No, I think that was great. I've been trying to collect as many perspectives because I'm very interested in what others are thinking.
Yeah. Was anybody else there, or did they participate Thursday? I was looking around the room and I'm not sure I saw anybody else there.
I attended online.
Oh, did you? Okay. Any thoughts or reflections, pal?
Yeah. Apart from the obvious audio difficulties with technology, which was frustrating, because it was quite a chore to try to understand what they were saying. But it was just interesting to watch. I made comments online because I was automatically prompted, which was good. I mean, they both knew how to present. Thanks.
Yeah, very different styles. I do want to just commend the city for, yeah, Jeff, hang on one second. I got you. I see your hand. They didn't have to do this. They didn't have to create an event where they invited the public in to actually meet these folks. And I think that in and of itself is worthy of notice and progress. You know, many cities might just go through the process of hiring somebody and then introducing them to everyone and saying, this is it. You know, ultimately the decision is Rebecca's because she's charged with that as city manager. I trust that she's going to take all of the feedback that she receives very seriously. And so I just want to, I'm grateful for the process itself. Jeff.
Yeah, I wanted to say first, adding on to what I was about to say, the invite was limited. I didn't even know nothing about that meeting until the last second, right? So the invite was limited. Like the invite wasn't sent out to all the real people of Battle Creek, first and foremost. If we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, the city of Battle Creek was not included in that process. But my question was, are either of those last two candidates from Battle Creek? Even though I know for sure, whoever they are, the city of Battle Creek knows nothing about this process. So I'm just gonna put that out there, right? So it's a false process. They might be two very qualified candidates, but the people of Battle Creek have not been a part of this process. I'm on a human relations board. I didn't even know the meeting was happening to the day they sent me, somebody sent me a text message. Well, the diversity, equity, and inclusion meeting happening tonight. So maybe y'all sent the email and I didn't pay attention to it, but I'm one of the regular people who don't always check my email, right? That process did not come to Washington Heights. I'm pretty sure it didn't go to Post Edition, and I'm absolutely sure it didn't go to the South Side either, right? So wherever that process took place, it might be the surface of qualified, successful people in Battle Creek that was informed about it. But the real citizens of Battle Creek who might have to take the bus, who might have to file for an EBT card or unemployment, or who might work out in a factory in Fort Custer, they were not involved in the process of selecting a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. Right.
Yeah.
And I keep saying those words because DEI means different things. Some people don't know what DEI means. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion. The real people of Battle Creek were not included in this process. I just wanted to say.
I can't speak to the invite list for the event. We can get back to you on that, but I do know that typical practice in the past has been, yeah.
And I'm not saying they might not, they might be very qualified individuals.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they aren't. I don't know who they are. They might be two I'm not saying that an individual from outside of Battle Creek would not be as or more qualified than because we might need somebody from out of town. We might need somebody who doesn't have a personal stake in the city, right? I don't have a personal opinion in it. I just know that I only found out about that meeting at the last minute. So I can only imagine most of my people didn't even know this shit is happening anyway, right? Yeah. If I could be blunt about it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jeff. I think you got to keep reminding us of that. I think that it is easy to get caught up in getting stuff done at the expense of excluding folks. So thank you for continuing to keep that on our radar. All right, more on that later. Let's plan on October, it's August, September's meeting. Hopefully we'll have an update on the diversity, equity, inclusion position. We will by then have this survey underway. And then we will, again, be out there listening and spending some time trying to figure out what we bring back to this group that we want the city to know. And also, I think from the city's perspective, Chris, as you know, you being a member of the team out there, what is it that they'd like us to know? And so that it can go, you know, bi-directional here. So, all right, well, thank you, everyone. We meet again in September. Yes. Go on, Dina.
That meeting, was it recorded and can it be viewed somewhere? Or no?
I believe it was live streamed, which I don't know if that means that it would be available as a recorded meeting.
It was recorded. It is available. we can get with Jessica to send it out, but I can tell you that the audio, as Mr. Woodward said, is very hard to hear because I tried to listen to it.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
I
for
have
your-
software, I'm sorry, but
Oh,
excuse me, I do have software. I do audio and video work for a living. I have software that can uplift the vocals if that's necessary. I don't really know what y'all talking about, right? So, but I heard her say that the audio wasn't that legible. If I could assist them in uplifting some audio so they can really hear something. I don't even know what they're talking
thanks.
about.
Maybe you could connect directly with Jessica after this meeting, then Jeff, and see what you could do to help. Thank you very much. All right, everyone, we will see you in September. In the meantime, if you need anything from me,